Welcome to Soldier Diary. In 1970, Lieutenant Jack Turner and his recon team were ambushed deep in the jungles of Vietnam. For 4 days, Jack fought to keep his wounded men alive, against the jungle, the enemy, and the odds. It was April 1970, and Jack's reconnaissance team was inserted deep behind enemy lines near the Cambodian border. But it was dangerous terrain, and casualties were heavy. As they struggled to get to safety, more and more of Jack's men were injured or killed. It was a narrow ridge, barely wide enough for a man to stand on, but it was their only chance. So they clung to it, desperately trying to defend themselves against the relentless attackers. With each step, the situation grew increasingly desperate. Then suddenly, through the trees, he saw the faint outline of another plane. Could this be their salvation? He didn't know. All he could do was keep waving until the plane flew right over him. He had been shot 3 times and he was losing a lot of blood, but he didn't care. He had survived. And that was all that mattered. Their mission was to identify and report on any enemy activity, but they had no way of knowing that they were walking into a trap. At that moment, Jack felt like he had never been happier. The soldiers helped the survivors board the helicopter, and then they flew away from the scene of the ambush. An elite and highly trained team of North Vietnamese Army commandos, known as the 340th Commando Battalion, had been lying in wait. He had lost good men, and he felt responsible for their deaths, but his fellow soldiers were there to support him. They understood what he was going through, and they helped him to get the help he needed. And as Jack's team moved through the underbrush, they were picked off one by one. They had heard about the ambush, and they had come to welcome him back. But Jack wasn't interested in talking about the ambush or his injuries. He was more interested in talking about the men who hadn't made it. He went on to serve with distinction in Vietnam, and when he returned home, he became an advocate for the men and women who had served in the war. He worked to ensure that they got the recognition and benefits they deserved. He missed them, and he wondered what had happened to their bodies. He also worried that they might not get the recognition they deserved. They were low on ammunition, and the enemy was growing bolder with each passing moment. And as it disappeared into the clouds, Jack's hope began to fade. He felt like he was in a nightmare, trapped in a hopeless situation with no way out. He knew that he had done his duty, and he had the respect of his fellow soldiers. But then he remembered something his father had told him when he was a boy. Never give up hope, his father had said. As long as there's life, there's hope. And so Jack made a decision. He would try to reach out to the Americans who were flying overhead on a resupply mission. If he could flag them down, they might be able to airlift the survivors to safety. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. By the time the Americans realized what was happening, it was too late. The element of surprise had been lost, as the ambushers closed in from all sides. The only chance for survival lay in reaching the high ground and escaping into the thick jungle canopy. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, they reached the top of a small hill. But as the hours passed, it became clear that they couldn't hold on much longer. He stood up on the ridge and began waving his arms, hoping to attract their attention. But the plane flew right by without seeing him. And so Jack took a deep breath and started again, waving his arms until he was sure that he would be seen. It was a medevac helicopter, and it was full of American soldiers. They had come to rescue the wounded.
Ouch.
Once they were far enough away, Jack began to feel the pain of his injuries. When he was finally brought back to base, he was greeted by his fellow soldiers. The truth was, Jack was struggling to cope with the trauma of what had happened. With the help of his friends and the medical staff at the base, Jack was eventually able to put the terrible ordeal behind him. And so, although the war had been a terrible tragedy, Jack was proud of his service. Like and subscribe if you'd survive with him. More true soldier stories coming soon.